Hey Parafans, it's Paradon here, and today I'm going to give you the lowdown on the Scole Experiments. The Scole Experimental Group, named after the English village of Scole, ran between 1993 and 1998. During this time, these four gifted mediums, part of this group, Robin and Sandra Foy, their job was to witness and record everything that was happening, and Alan and Diane Bennett, they were the mediums who actually facilitated the sessions. They all sat in this little basement under this cottage, and they called it the Skull Hole. And down there they had a little table and chairs, some basic scientific equipment, and they ran these experiments, you could say, on average twice a week over those 5 years. And some of the evidence that they documented is mind-blowing. I guess what draws me to this so much is not only the evidence, which, as I mentioned, is pretty freaky, is the fact that they were actually monitored by the Society for Psychical Research. This is a research group based in the UK that have debunked plenty of mediums in the past, but they actually wrote a whole report based on these experiments, and I'll give you all the links below so that you can check all this out. And there's a fabulous documentary on this as well, which I'll also provide a link for, as well as the website that I got some of this information from. Before we do delve too far into that evidence, though, it's important to note that they did have, controls to these experiments. So they had protocols in place where the table that they sat at was sectioned off underneath, so they couldn't brush up against one another. They also wore luminous wristbands, which were attached via Velcro. So if anyone was going to remove it, they would hear the noise of the Velcro ripping apart. It's also important to note, I guess, that all these experiments were conducted in a darkened room. So these controls were very important in that respect. For the first 12 months that they facilitated these experiments in the Skull Hole, they really didn't get a lot of evidence to start with. They really needed to build a relationship with what they began to call their spirit team. So this is a group of energies that they were communicating with on the other side. Some of the evidence that they collected were photographic evidence. They had audio and visual recordings. They also received apports, which are like the appearance of physical items within the room that had no conceivable way of turning up besides materializing from, somewhere else, basically. It's also important to note that they did invite other people to come in and verify what they were doing. So, when they conducted their experiments, there was always some element of verification and control over what was happening within the room. Some of the first evidence that they were able to capture were of orbs within the room, balls of light that would fly from one side to the other, fly in and out of people, bounce up and down on a table. The photo that you're looking at right now is an orb that was just simply spiraling in the room. Other types of photographic evidence where the spirit team that they were using were able to imprint on Polaroid film. You're seeing some evidence of that here, landmarks, portraits. They then moved on to just simply sitting a canister of film in the room, and from there then they moved on to a canister of film within a locked box that was put in the box by someone outside, signed and sealed canister inside this box, locked away, and then brought back out and developed by stuff that they had on site to develop this film. The Spirit team communicated on rolls of film that extended out over photographs, over many photographs. I think the longest image that they captured was like 1200 millimeters long, which would be, you know, consecutive photos if taken using a camera, which is pretty amazing. They captured some really awesome video evidence as well. So landmarks here, you can see pyramids. They also received bubbles, orbs with people's faces in them that seem to develop out over time. This is a really good example. You can really see the gentleman's face there wearing glasses, bit of a moustache. They're communicating interdimensionally, so was no surprise. They also got images of what we would look at as the classic alien ET biological entity. The Spirit team showed them how to set up these experiments. So they did what they called the Alice experiment, where they used mirrors in a video camera so that the mirror would only allow it to loop what was being filmed back into the viewfinder of the camera, which is really cool. They also showed them how they could enhance the audio side of things. So they gave them the instructions on how to build this audio enhancing device. And what's really interesting about this is that they have a pretty big clue as to who they were dealing with when they got these instructions. They're thinking it was like Thomas Edison, of all people. Like, how cool would that be to communicate in the afterlife with people and give them instructions on something that when you were alive, that was your forte, that was what you specialized in. So he actually then signed on the negative, and you're looking at his signed signature on the film. Then here's a photo of his signed initials on a patent document that was able to be retrieved, and the similarities are totally eerie. What do you reckon? I just cannot believe how similar the two initials are. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit freaky, and this is where you'll either go, this is totally cool, or these guys are just totally full of shit. But these are basically apports. So remember, apports are those items that seemingly materialize within the room, coming from another place, another space, another time. And some of these items are just unbelievable. When they would hit the room, they would come in with a bang. You would hear, you know, a massive bang, like something was slapping on the table, and it could be, you know, a feather, for instance. But check out some of these things, they're cool. Now, this newspaper, for instance, was printed back in the 1940s. Here it comes into this room in absolute pristine condition, but yet within about 6 days was as yellow as one of the newspapers you would have gotten from the 1940s. Anyway, that's the Scole experiment in a nutshell, the basic lowdown. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm going to have lots more coming out really soon. I'm also on Patreon. You can check me out there. Do share and like and sign up for notifications as well. And shine on, you crazy diamonds. Till next time, this is Paradon signing off.